Now, according to a new study by intelligent.com, Generation Z or Z is struggling to make the smooth transition from school to the workforce. The study surveyed nearly 1,000 business leaders and showed that 60% of employers have already fired young graduates this year, with 1 in 7 considering not hiring them in the next year. If you want to know who Gen Z is, let me give you some facts about them. The most populous generation on the planet at the moment. They are digital natives. They are ethnically diverse. They are ambitious, entrepreneurial in spirit, financially savvy, committed to ethical consumption and a strong sense of social responsibility. Work is more than just a paycheck. And what came out of this survey was many of them would prioritise work-life balance over money. They need that day off every fortnight rather than putting the nose to the grindstone and just accumulating wealth in their most productive years. Very interesting defence of them, if you like. And I don't mean this to be an attack on Gen Zs. I really don't. But and I'll get to my point in a moment. But in terms of the defence of Gen Zs, a woman named Jessica Kriegel, who's a workforce strategy leader at Culture Partners, points out that stereotypes are common for every generation. That is true. And she says most of these generalisations are embedded in the culture and the torch of criticism is passed every 20 years, which is so true. So 133693, we're finding out that Gen Z are, as I said, struggling to make the smooth transition from the school to the workforce. I think they have been impacted to a much greater degree by COVID than older generations were. And I think we ignore that at our peril. I think it was a defining moment of their generation, and I don't think it's been properly processed. But it does lead me to ask you this question, 133693. What is the shortest amount of time you spent in one job? The shortest. Were you fired? Did you quit? Was it months? Is it days? Is it hours? In my case, weeks. I was host of a TV show on Channel 7 for 2 glorious weeks. Well, I was co-host. So the show got axed after 2 weeks. So that's my record. There would be other jobs I did, maybe a week here and there. But I want to know if you can beat that. Woody, who works on this program, he's one of the producers. He revealed in a pre-show meeting this morning that he was once fired from a charcoal chicken shop after 48 hours. He had climbed the greasy pole to the top of the charcoal chicken industry in Rowville, fighting off many rivals for the privilege. And you could imagine he had certainly his choice of the ladies in that suburb, having risen to a statusful position as an employee of a charcoal chicken joint. But after 48 hours, he was sent packing with not so much as minimum chips to say thanks for his service. I want to know if you can beat that. 133693, the shortest amount of time you have spent in a job. Sue Ellson is a career expert. She joins me now. Good afternoon, Sue.
Hi, Tony.
To my point, I mean, I'm just putting that out there, certainly in what I've seen in my own children, but how defining was COVID on Generation Z, and has it formed an expectation when they go to the workplace? I mean, are they privileging life above the grind?
Yeah, well, look, it's a very complex question. You probably need to speak to a health policy professional to get the real insights. But some of the things I've noticed is a lot of that particular generation feel uncomfortable talking in person to people. Okay. They don't like making telephone calls. They prefer to send text messages. So with them being digital natives, there's an awful lot of things they do electronically. And I suspect a lot of employers are being inundated with AI-generated resumes, key selection criteria answers and all that sort of thing as well. And then some of those traditional recruitment processes that would have involved looking at the whole person may be getting missed. So as an example, let's say you want to have somebody in customer service front-facing at the local charcoal chicken shop, and their favourite pastime is computer games. Well, I don't think that's necessarily going to be a good segue into that type of role.
You've just described my son. Anyway,
Oh, really?
yes, yes. So he is managing to hold down a job,
Great.
which is good. But I think he's conscious of his phone use. It is public facing.
Yes.
So is it also? And I'm not sure, but this is certainly a stereotype that they don't view the relationship between themselves and their employer as hierarchical or vertical. It's a lot more horizontal. It's like, you're lucky to have me. Here are my preconditions for the job, and we'll take it from there. Or is that another stereotype?
Well, it could be a stereotype, but if you think about it, when we started work, we didn't have access to the internet, so we couldn't look up an answer immediately and get a result. So we had to rely on the other professionals we were working with to, get the insights and the intel and so on. And a lot of that particular generation have got side hustles and little businesses that they're starting up themselves. And I think what probably needs to change is the leadership of the organisations needs to adjust to the capabilities of these candidates because, in the right environment, they can be fantastic. But also, if we again go back to that recruitment process, when I was recruiting grads for Westpac, way back in the early 90s, we actually said that somebody coming out of formal education, now whether that just be a diploma through TAFE or, formal university studies, it would take us about 18 months to get them to be a useful employee. And I was an employee who worked full-time and studied part-time. Now, of the current number of 15 to 20-year-olds, only 6%, according to the ABS data, are now working full-time and studying part-time. So the shift has gone from we study first and we work part-time, and in those part-time roles, you swan in for 3 hours and you swan out. And you don't really develop that tenacity to stay 8 hours, a full day's work and so on. But also, previous generations had to leave home, get a flat, pay the rent. And if you're still living at home with your parents and you don't pay board, which my children didn't, then, you can juggle work-life balance a little bit better because you haven't got bills to pay. There's not that requirement to earn the money just to keep going.
133693, 133693. What is the shortest amount of time you have spent in a job? And in relation to that, Sue, this figure here, 60% of employers have already fired young graduates this year. You mentioned 18 months to kind of bring somebody up to speed and make them, I don't want to say useful, but let's say to make them competent in the workplace. It seems to me like employers are the one with the short attention spans now.
Correct.
Or are not necessarily forgiving. Why would that be?
Well, when I was doing recruitment, I had to attend a 2-day course and, had to pass tests and so on before I was allowed to select anybody. Whereas now people say, oh, gut feel, I know what I'm doing. And then another sort of policy that's come in is an open hiring policy where you say, all right, can you do A, B, C and D? And if you can, if you're applicant number 1, you'll be first off the rank, and applicant number 2 will be second cab off the rank. But what they don't tell you in that fabulous open hiring policy is they sack them quickly too. So, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on nowadays. And then there's the online assessments. So if you've got an online assessment process and you're competent at filling that out, you might get a gig. And if you're not competent at it, you won't get a gig. And I battle tested an online recruitment service at the end of last year just to see how it would go, being somebody with lots of digital skills. I thought, I should be able to shoe this in. And I helped a 29-year-old do it, and they got work within 3 days. And here I am 6 months later, and I still don't have one gig out of the platform.
Jeez.
So, there's lots of disparity in all of these systems for older people, for younger people, and I can understand why when they get into a place they say, oh my goodness, this is not for me, because again, maybe even the candidate hasn't done the right research. And I remember meeting a bus driver, a bus replacement from Bendigo to Melbourne, and this bus driver said, I knew I was really shy, so I chose to become a bus driver so I would start talking to people. So I think if we can help these COVID-affected young people understand, what they might have missed or what extra skills they might need, and we can help them with that kind of stuff, that could make a big difference.
We'll see if it does. Sue Ellson, career expert, thank you for your time this afternoon.
You're welcome, Tony.
133 693 133 693. So